All right, KMR, welcome back to the channel that's got the brap. We're going to talk some rotary. That's what we do. So right here, we've got the built block that we were looking at the internal package of last week. I'll put that video in a link below. This particular build is a 1986 to 1988 Series 4 Turbo 2 Mazda 13B. This particular block is pretty rare at this point, and it's basically known as one of the weaker castings. Now, if you go into early Mazda turbo rotaries when you were really trying to build high boost, dune buggy guys, drag race guys, you ended up having issues where at high boost levels, the block actually cracks out here on the dowel pin ends. Now, there's a lot of ways to work around that, and we're going to talk about why we built this one the way we did and what the expected horsepower and goals were. Now, for me personally, I don't worry about those casting sizes that much. It's a personal opinion. I've built so many early 3 rotors, which had the small castings, or early Turbo 2 or 12A. A lot of those early blocks had small castings, and as long as you had your goals correct, knew the limitations of the build, there was really no problem with them. And if you knew you were going to exceed the limit of boost level that these blocks can handle, which is right around 14 pounds of boost, and most of the time that's going to put you in the 300 to 400 horsepower range, which is a lot of power, and still be reliable as long as you don't detonate. So we ended up coming up with a lot of techniques to build stronger blocks. You can do doweling internally or studding, but in this case, the customer had very specific goals. He wanted it to sound amazing. He wanted it to be a full Bridgeport, and he wanted to basically utilize the stock block, but make upgrades internally to some modern parts. And I thought it was a great idea because as long as you don't detonate, as long as you don't exceed boost levels of about 14 PSI, these blocks are still fantastic, and it maintains some of the integrity of the Turbo 2 car. I think a lot of people instantly upgrade to an FD3S block or Cosmo block, which don't mount in the cars as well. So this way you've got your stock block with some great upgraded internals. And internally, like we showed in the previous video, we ended up going with a full FD3S rotating assembly, and that does a number of things to help upgrade the performance and reliability of the block. So along with the rotating assembly, rotors, shaft, and gears, everything kind of goes together. We balanced the full rotating assembly, courtesy Mazda tricks, and it was also lightened rotors, side cut rotors, and then upgraded all of the bearings. So front and rear stationary gears got upgraded to 93 FD3S multi-window with brand new spec'd out bearings. And then the rotors also got 93 FD3S polished and spec'd out bearings. So everything matching the shaft, bearings, and gears. Now, there's some great advantages there. The rotors themselves are the lightest of the low compression lineup. And out of all of the generations of rotors, the FD3S 93 to 95 or 93 to 99, depending on where you're at in the world, were the highest compression, lightest of the low compression rotors. So that gave you the ability to achieve higher RPM without as much wobble or instability and flex of the shaft. The more weight you're spinning, the more the shaft is going to flex. You get more deflect. But Mazda cut the weight down and gave us a good mild range of compression performance. So you could achieve good boost levels and monitor your knock depending on if you were on gasoline or pump gas, race gas, things like that. And I think it's important to note that the FD3S was actually an FIA homologated car that Mazda built, and it's why we see such good performance parts out of those blocks. The gears themselves, like I mentioned, are a multi-window bearing gear, so that's upgrading your gear and your oiling performance. And they also are a hardened stationary gear, so some of the better gears that you can find if you're lucky enough to have them or find them. Also a great upgrade to the Turbo 2 blocks, which had a non-multi-window bearing. They did have hardened gears, but at this point, a lot of these times these blocks are rebuilt, so you don't always know what you're getting. So it was very nice to just upgrade those stationary gears, FD3S parts, get that better oiling system, upgrade the regulator, just generally improve the oil system to match the bearings, shaft, and gears. That way, as this motor spins to higher RPM, because it is a full bridge, everything that is backing it up, the bottom end essentially of what a rotary has, your oiling system, protecting the shaft, and being as light as possible, protecting against shaft deflect and rotor layover. They did get side cut, they did get lightened. All of that's going to help with that rotational effect that tries to pull the rotors over at their tips, and ideally keeps the tips from hitting the side plates. And we know our specs, so we're confident with the RPM goals, about 9,500, and with the performance goals, about 350 horsepower, that this will actually be a very reliable setup and still will be within the block's limitations boost-wise. The only end result that kills any rotary is potentially knock. And so obviously that comes more into play with your ECU system, fuel delivery system, and monitoring your air intake temps. But one thing we can do from the engine building side is we did upgrade the apex seals on this build to a set of E&J 2mm race seals. So that way if there is potential detonation or mild detonation, you don't shatter an apex seal, damaging multiple components. You get bend or warpage that, yes, obviously can hurt performance, but allows the block to see another day, potentially even drive out of the situation. So creating a build that is within the performance goals of its own ability, and then adding some key parts to help build in better protection or better performance capability is something we're always looking at. Other than that, it's a whole bunch of OEM parts, Mazda Tricks parts, Mazda Tricks supplied parts, and a bunch of just good work. This block is about to roll out, and I'm pretty hyped on it. I actually like Turbo 2s. I had to think pretty hard to get all that spec'd out and said properly. Any comments or questions below, let me know. We did also upgrade to a steel metal front cover gasket, just a little better than the old paper ones. It's just a fine example of what you can do with a lot of available parts or findable parts to upgrade performance and reliability on your Turbo 2, or for that matter, any generation block. I think that's a wrap. Thanks for watching. We're out of here. 13B out.